Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And today, we are continuing with our sort of getting started series for the factions in Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings, where we take the new 5th anniversary boxes and break down what's in them, how they build out to show you how to make an 800-point army, and also roughly tell you how they play with a little rundown of some of the faction rules. Because I truly think that these 5th anniversary boxes are incredible deals. And in this case, Dweghom's no different. This is one that I have and have played myself. And I think creates a really cool core for your army that is pretty compelling with some friction or drawbacks, which we want to talk about. And then we'll wrap it up with some suggestions on how you can also move forward after this box, if you want to expand. But first, we have to talk about faction rules, because the whole box sort of runs around these faction rules. John, army rule number 1. What are we working with? What, you get back from a car accident and you forget how the show works, John? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, clearly. So first thing is the firstborn children of war. All regiments in the army ignore enemy regiments for the purpose of determining the reinforcement line. This is less impactful at 800 points or at like smaller point values, but the more you play the game, the more you're going to realize that this is a great way of making sure that you can get your relatively slower models up the table faster and in places where you want them easier without having to finagle with the reinforcement line, and where you can and cannot place things on the sides of the table. Particularly for monster bases, which we'll talk about later, it can be really good to be able to like sneaky a little Ironclad Drake onto the little corner of the table and just be like, "What up? I'm here. I'm a lizard."
John has felt this happen on more than one occasion.
It's true. And the next rule, which, Joe, your Aghm demands that you describe it.
Okay.
The pursuit of Aghm. Tell us about it.
Okay, there are, 4 paragraphs of discussion here. Okay, and you can read it all. It's there on the screen. You can also go to the website. All the rules are free on the website. I'm just going to distill this because I'm not going to read the 4 paragraphs. Your command stands can make challenges to enemy heroes as if they were heroes, with a lot of caveats. Basically, one of your command stands can look at an enemy hero and say, "Duel me." The qualifier, though, is that enemy heroes can decline this duel with no downsides. Meaning that, they won't take all of the normal penalties for declining a duel. However, it does mean that if you have 2 units attacking an enemy hero's unit, you can have one of them say, "Duel me," and then the other one say, "Duel me," if you're in the right order in the command stack, and the hero can't decline twice, and then you could get this to go off. It's a cute trick. It's not one I would rely on very often, because of how easy it is for the enemy to normally get around it. So I wouldn't hang your hat on it. But it is a thing that you could sometimes set up and make happen. And, keep an eye out for it, particularly if a unit has already said no to a duel or in some other way can't decline. Well, then maybe just try it if you have like a unit of Dragon Slayers or Wardens, something that's pretty killy. See if you can't follow up and maybe snipe a hero.
Yep, it can be handy.
I think we've had it come up once in one of our games. I don't think it... Yeah, it was only once, but it's a thing you have, and I'm not going to complain about having stuff that's at least useful sometimes. But really, a lot of the flavor, though, for Dweghom hangs in this last rule called the Dweghom Creeds, where, depending on the warlord that you pick, you get bonus rules that deeply affect your whole army, which is really, really cool. So if your warlord is a tempered, for example, meaning a tempered sorcerer or a tempered steel shaper in the army currently, you get the Tempered Creed ability where you can build up elemental potency tokens through casting spells and then spend those on units to auto-pass some saves and be tanky or heal yourself. It's very cool. And then the Ardent Creed is that because you're being led by this incredibly over-the-top war zealot, your whole army gets, your command stands work harder, they punch harder, and they want to prove themselves more, so they get more punchy, and they also refuse to be broken from time to time, which is really, really cool. However, in this box, just out of the box, you have to have the Hold Raegh as your warlord. And he is not from either of those sub-factions. He is from a sub-faction called the Clans, and there is no clan creed as of recording on 9/8/2024. So you will not get this special rule out of your box. And I'm going to be honest, that's really unfortunate. You are giving up a whole, like, most of your army flavor hinges on that rule, and you will not get it for this box. We will circle back to how you can try to mitigate that later, but currently you will miss out on that rule altogether, and that does mean you have two rules that are basically very, very circumstantial for your smaller point value games. Which I think is largely a downside. It means you'll have less to sort of juggle, but still, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's sort of unfortunate. We have to, at the top of the video, sort of bring in what we think is one of the biggest weaknesses of this box, which is that you have to use the Hold Raegh as a warlord, which doesn't particularly give you a great entry point into the Dweghom faction as a whole. Currently, that might change in the future. This video could become mute.
I really hope it does become moot. Like, I would love if they added a hold, like a clan's creed, so then this problem goes away. Now you get some cool clan ability off of the Hold Raegh. But not yet. So, out of the box, though, we've touched on the factions. Next thing we think really makes a faction work, so you understand how they exist, is the hero themselves and their supremacy ability. So let's just run through it really quick. For him, it's in the presence of Memancers, or Nemancers? Memancers? Nemancers? I'm going to go with Nemancers.
They're memory wizards. That's what they are.
They're wizards who like recording things. It's fine. It's cool. They're not remembrancers. Really evocative of that, though. Euphratequila, but short. So, in the presence of Nemancers, character and regiment command stands in this army count as 2 additional stands for the purposes of seizing objective zones. Furthermore, when a medium or heavy regiment that has this army's warlord character stand currently attached to it is within range of an objective zone, they always count as seizing the objective. So, your army gets better at holding objectives, and if your warlord here, if the Hold Raegh is in a medium unit, which he will be of initiates, if he gets on the zone, you take it automatically regardless of how many enemy dudes are there. This is the core of how this little setup for your warband is going to work. Is that you are going to try to contest objectives pretty hard, especially compared to other armies that are out there, and take objectives from them and score points, especially with these initiates and maybe sometimes the Fireforged. And just try to win on points while getting value and grinding it out. That is really his big benefit. But to be honest, while it's a simple game plan, I think it's actually a pretty good one. Especially at 800 points, where the boards are a little smaller, you can get to the objectives a little faster. I think that generally just works well.
Yeah, and it's an interesting little trick to sort of learn early on about how objective play matters so much in Conquest, and so it's handy. And then, to be honest, he's not a bad slouch himself. Like, he does do some stuff in combat. He's got 5 wounds, which is more than the standard 4 for a human. He's defense 4, resolve 4. That's all pretty good. Giving resolve 4 to his unit, that's pretty good. He's got 5 attacks, clash 4, so he just hits with all 5 attacks generally.
And he's got cleave 1, which is quite good.
Yes. So without upgrades, still pretty good. And we are going to put him in this list without any upgrades. And he's not going to blow your socks off, but he's absolutely going to do something. Especially into other normal baseline infantry.
And secondarily, he has the special rule here, Aghm to be gained. Where if you take him in a Holthane's regiment, which we won't be doing here, he gives that unit flank, which means you could come in automatically. Holthanes are not in this box, so we won't be getting use of it, but it is a thing to note because you're going to have this hero for the rest of your army.
And flank is pretty rare in Dweghom.
Yeah. You will find in Dweghom, one of the challenges of list building is you have, at least in the lists I have built, you have a lot of medium and heavy units, which are competing to want to come in. And sometimes that's really hard. So anytime you could take something out of that dice roll pool and give it automatic flank, it can be compelling in a list. We won't use it here, but I do think it's worth shouting out just so y'all know as you expand forward. But in this case, instead of going into Thanes, he's going to be going into Initiates. Which is one of my favorite units in Dweghom. I love the look of this shield wall thing we got going, where the front line all has shields, back line all has these long pikes stabbing over the top. So they get a couple of special rules. One of them is Devout. So if they are casted on by a priest, that priest gets bonus successes to cast on them because they are so religious. That won't affect you here, but it will affect you if you jump into an Ardent Carawall expansion. We'll talk about it. They get a shield, meaning they're tankier from the front, putting them up to defense 4 from the front.
Pretty good. And with the hold ray in there, they're now resolve 4. That's pretty tough for a medium unit.
Especially for for Dweghom, this is about as cheap as they come, sort of battle line unit. At 145. Defense 4, resolve 4 with the hero in there. That's pretty great. Pretty great. Also, they come with support too. This isn't going to matter because in this setup, because we're just building it right out of the box, and you need 2 units of Initiates to be able to legally bring the Ironclad Drake and the Fireforged. However, as you expand upwards, one of the things that you can do is only have 1 blob of Initiates, but reinforce it to have 5 stands in it, or 6 stands in it, or however many you like. Having multiple ranks in there. And when you do that, you would lose attacks from your guys who aren't in the front, which happens all the time. But with support, even if your guys aren't in the front rank attacking, they can still attack over the top with their big spears and help their brothers in arms.
So they get more attacks.
Yes. So going into a big blob isn't nearly as punishing for you as it would be for other units.
And their next rule, Iron Discipline, really sort of like hammers that home, because even if they get flanked, they're not going to lose that support stuff, which is really handy, which means like they can really just sort of become a rock if you need them to be. And like, again, with the hold ray in there, that is defense 4 in the front with resolve 4, making them very, very tough. And with 5 wounds, it's pretty challenging to slap them around. And at 45 points per stand, it's pretty all right. Overall, would suggest. Clash 2 sort of and movement 5 kind of weakens it a little bit, but like, man, these aren't your killing units. These are going to stand on objective units.
And again, they also count for bonus because of your warlord here. So they're going to count for an extra stand for their command stand. And also, the warlord's going to be in one of them. And if he touches an objective, he takes it. So like, these are really your 2 objective pushers, and they're going to do it pretty well. And one of them is going to have the Warlord in there with some Cleave 1 attacks that he's also throwing into their attack pool, which will make that unit a little more killy. Overall, I think it is a rock solid baseline to put in for your just objective pushing.
But we've talked about objective pushing. What about damage? What about ripping
Murder?
and tearing?
You just want murder? You want a monster truck rally?
Yes.
Sponsored by Monster Energy Drink?
Maybe.
Okay. Well, here we go. This is basically the Gravedigger of this army. Where Ironclad Drake, he's a heavy. Okay? He's a monster, which means he's going to come in a little later than everyone else. But I promise you, he's totally worth it. It's okay to wait for turn 3 for him. He is, number 1, he's movement 7, which is quite fast by comparison to the rest of the stuff here.
It's pretty good.
Which is good.
He's and I know T-Rex, but it's pretty all right.
It's pretty good, and he's going to need it to get where he needs to go, because he's coming in a little later. Granted, with, as we mentioned, you can ignore enemy reinforcement line stuff, but in small games, you probably going to struggle to get a lot of value off of it. But you can bring him a little further up the table, and then move 7, he's going to get somewhere. He has 12 attacks, Cleave 2, Relentless Blows, and Terrifying 2, meaning when he hits you, it's gonna hurt a lot. It's going to hurt a lot. You are going to take a lot of damage from those Cleave 2 hits, just punching through armor. And Relentless Blows. If you roll a 1, you get exploding hits, as some people call it. If you roll a 1, instead of hitting with 1 dice, that becomes 2 dice. Which means your enemy's going to have to make more saves. And that goes together very nicely with Terrifying 2, so that when they make their saves, their leadership is going to be lower, and they're going to be more likely to lose wounds to resolve.
And that Terrifying also helps with the impact attacks, because he has 6 impact attacks at Brutal Impact 2. Meaning that Cleave 2 in combat is also Cleave 2 in his impacts. And with the Terrifying 2, this guy's doing damage. Like, he is going to, short of like Old Dominion trickery, this is just going to hit something and wipe it for the most part. It is taking 12 attacks from this and 6 impacts. Like, if you can get a charge clash, it's pretty good. That's pretty good. It kills a lot of stuff. And he's not exactly like a glass cannon himself either.
He's defense 3, which is quite good for a big monster, and resolve 4, so he's not going to take a lot of leadership loss.
And surprisingly enough, he still has evasion 2, which means even if something has cleave 3, he'll still save on 2s. Like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And 17 wounds means he's not going to just go nowhere, like, out of nowhere.
He's a big ball of damage. Like, you're not going to get him quickly. Yeah, it's very, very good. And also, it's a minor thing, but worth noting, he has Unstoppable. So you get to re-roll failed charge rolls, so that when he does come in, he's had to wait a minute, so it's really important for him to make it in and get his value off, get his damage off, get in the mix. And if you fail a charge roll, that could really stunt your momentum. And Unstoppable just gives you a much, much lower chance that that's going to happen to you.
And he also has like a minor buff that he provides to every like character stands and command stands within 8 inches of him.
Aghm Glory.
He gives him flurry, which like you're not going to bank on this, right? Like you're not going to position your Ironclad Drake to try to maximize how many like re-rolling command stands you can get. But if you happen to have like a command stand nearby, you're not going to complain about having flurry, especially if you can somehow manage to get the little trick off to be able to duel a character with flurry. That's pretty good. But really, this guy is a missile. Like, he is a meat missile. You throw at a thing, and it just... Ironclad Drake versus T-Rex is quite a fight to watch. It's very fun. It's
Who wins?
Conquest.
I don't know. Me, for getting to watch it. Like...
and it's a great include. And, like, from a monetary point of view, this is a huge win for this box.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is definitely a model that almost everyone who plays Dweghom wants to some degree.
Yes.
And the fact that it's in a starter box. Like, that's a killer starter box model. It gives, like, it's quite good. Speaking of killer starter box models, though, let's talk about the Fireforged. Ooh. Despite the fact that you are probably going to hate these models by the time you're done building them.
Oh.
They do have some quite good rules.
Yeah, just a little shout out for everyone who plays Dweghom. Hats off, just like tip of the hat to everyone who has to build these Fireforged minis. They were a pain for me, and I hope I never build another unit. They were finicky and a lot of filing and a lot of mold lines, but they are really fun on the table. So I promise it's worth it. Just keep going.
They're very cool. Like, they're objectively some of the coolest shit in this game. But rules-wise, right? They have movement 5. It's pretty standard for Dweghom, pretty standard across the game. It's not that impressive. Volley 2, which you're like, they're a shooting unit. That's pretty bad. We'll get there.
Hang in there.
Clash 2. You're like, also, like, they're like, why is the clash and the volley the same if they're a shooting unit? Whatever. 3 attacks. You're like, oh, well, that really sucks. Yeah, just don't get them into combat. You'll be all right. 5 wounds. Resolve 3. Defense 3. You're like, okay, that's pretty all right. But they also have shields.
So they're defense 4 from the front.
So the defense 4 from the front, where they're going to be shooting at, which is quite good.
And 15 wounds.
And 15 wounds. Pretty good. They're barrage 4, range 14 inches, and armor piercing 2. So it's very rare to have range attacks in this game that have cleave 2. Like, it's like...
I can't think of another unit that has it, actually.
It's pretty rare. So that's really good that they have that. It means that they're going to punch through a lot of, like, tougher targets, which is really, really good. Being within 14-inch range kind of sucks, but that's okay, because they're mediums. They're going to want to get up on objectives and shoot stuff down, but Barrage 4 means that even a base like group of 3 of them is going to have 12 shots, which is really good. And really what this unit does the best, in my experience, is that it finds other range units in the opponent's army and just shoots them to death. Like these things shoot my slingers and just go, you're dead. Sorry.
Yep.
And it's harder for you to kill me because I have defense 4.
Yeah.
Like,
pretty hard to respond to if you're AP nothing slinger guy.
and like that seems really simple. And at this point, at 800 points, it is really simple. But you can start doing more complicated stuff with this unit later, like getting different characters and putting inside here, because this unit's available to things like the Tempered Sorcerer or the Tempered Steel Shaper, right? Where you can put those characters who have range attacks and want to be at range anyways as casters inside of this unit, and then that unit's also kind of tough. You can give them buffs, and you can cast spells, and do all sorts of other stuff, and turn this unit into even more damage or more of a utility piece. It's really, and it opens it up a lot more. And that's it. Like, that's it for this Dweghom list. It's a whole box. And really, to explain what it does, really simply, is it just punches. Like, it moves forward, it punches stuff, it shoots stuff, it stands on objectives. It plays very honest Conquest. It's not full of tricks, it's not full of, like, weird stuff. It just moves initiates onto objectives. It has an Ironclad Drake charge their toughest, strongest thing, and the Fireforged pick the targets they can shoot and shoot them.
Yeah, I've played this exact box quite a bit in like demo games with friends. And generally what happens is my initiates will move up, they will dive, like in smaller boards, oftentimes there's like 3-ish objectives, sometimes like 4. But like my initiates are going to dive on these objectives. And then Ironclad is going to heat-seeking missile the first threat, and then Fireforged will come up along the side, sort of backing up my initiates to one of their flanks, either left or right. And then after the initiates tie something up face-to-face, the Fireforged will then shoot from the side to hit something in the flank with their AP2, which avoids shields, and then also puts AP -2 on top of it. And with that strategy, your 14-inch short range is less of a problem because the big threat has been tied up in combat. So you're safe to get in a little closer. And also, it gets around a lot of really, really tanky unit tricks. For example, I have used Fireforged to handle some Old Dominion tank blobs, where they have like a big Praetorian unit with their shield and their bastion up, and like that makes it really hard to kill them from the front. But if you then put AP -2 shots in their side, that problem stops being a problem. And it is a nice response trick, and also a way to keep them safe. And also, the Fireforged are a medium, meaning they can also get on an objective if you feel like it's safe. I rarely have the Ironclad want to like sit on an objective. He just sometimes instantly takes them while he's kicking ass and taking names. But the Fireforged I have also just been like, oh, well, there's nothing worth shooting that I'm ever going to get to. You just sit over here for now and hold. And the whole box just rolls around that idea of who's going to sit on an objective and who's going to kick some butt. It's not a complicated plan, but I actually think it's an incredibly compelling way to get into and start learning Conquest, if not for that warlord issue of not having a creed. Because this isn't a complicated setup, and I think even new players could figure out how to pilot this with just a couple games. It's really nice. However, the downside, it does exist, that you have no hold creed. So this hold ray being your warlord is really unfortunate, and you want to fix it as soon as possible. Which leads us to, okay, let's say you buy this box. You play it quite a bit, you get some experience with it, you have a great time, and you go, I want to do more. How do I expand from here? And that's a little hard to say because there are multiple options that are really compelling, and none of them are wrong.
Yeah,
It's more to your flavor.
Yeah, the best advice we can give you is to click the army rules section and sort of go to the different creeds you can pick from and pick whichever one of those you want, right? It's either tempered or ardent.
Yeah.
And then if you want the ardent, go with the Carawall, and if you want the tempered, you have to pick which sorcerer you want.
Sorcerer. Yeah.
Yeah. a Steel Shaper or a Sorcerer? Do you want Fireball guy or do you want like Steel, like buff guy?
And depending on that want, that's what you're basically going to do. So let's say you want to be, you've decided you want to go Sorcerer, you want to have elemental potency tokens, you want to go that route. Very cool. New tempered Steel Shaper model, you like that a lot? Great, you buy a Steel Shaper. And then just build out his regiment, however you'd like. You can move that Fireforged down to here, because it's a mainstay option here. Very cool. Yep. That lets you bring, maybe you want another big monster, if you like me, great. Add in a Stone Forged, that's really great. Maybe you want some Magma Forged. Oh no, I have to have another mainstay? Cool. Bring some Ballista or Hold Warriors to better set on an objective while other stuff starts fighting. And then, whatever you put in this is the key that I need you to do. You're going to go in here and click Select as Warlord on your second guy. And unselect it from the hold ray.
Yes. That is the best thing you can do for this Dweghom in the future. And also, like, look at what we did, right? If you look at the points for that, you quickly got to 1,500 points. Pretty easily. Stoneforge is an incredibly sick new model. The Magma Forge are incredibly sick new, like, sculpts. They're great. Whole Ballista would give you some great early game pressure with some ranged units, and having a Fireforge for Steel Shaper slots in is pretty good. Right? That wasn't a whole lot of oomph, right? But it's a pretty clear trajectory of where you can go with the faction leading up, right?
Yep.
And getting used to it. And another point, and it's sort of a point for all of Conquest, but really here, all of these things are still useful. Like, you're never going to hit a point where you're like, oh, wow, I had this thing that's never useful again. Like, no, you're good.
The Fireforge slotted really easily into the second warband. No problem. Boom.
The most difficult thing is that you still have to bring a Hold Raegh to bring an Ironclad Drake, but if you really just want to bring the Ironclad Drake, just drop one of the Initiates, and maybe...
Then, yeah, here's what I do. So I want the Ironclad Drake because I like Stompy. I really want to make big Stompy Dweghom work, so I bring a Hold Raegh, even though I really don't like him for a lot of purposes. He does something well, and that is sit in a big blob of Initiates. So my Initiates aren't useless. I just instead add more stands. Now I'm bringing 5 or 6 stands of Initiates.
Yeah.
And the Hold Raegh in there. So if he touches something, he's going to hold it. And now, because of their support bonuses, this big blob is going to be pretty hard to kill at 5 wounds a stand. I mean, we're talking 25 wounds here. That's pretty good.
Defense 4 in the front and Resolve 4. Like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's pretty worth the points. There are arguably better things that could be done, but, like, I know, like, the rest of the list sort of wants to be doing fight stuff. That unit just picks an objective and just goes, I don't die here. I live here forever.
Which is really useful to have in your list. I also think you could do the same thing with Ardent Karawa. I have done it. Or, in grand scale, add in another warband if you want to, like, get up to 2,000 points. But again, pick your character to flavor. For Dweghom, you really want to build around the characters. And then just kind of put stuff through the warbands as makes sense for you. And then picking your warlord matters a lot. The Ardent Karawa is just as compelling as, like, Tempered Steel Shaper, in my opinion. I think there's gas in that tank, and it is not a wrong call. But the big thing is just go in another warband direction, add it, and then make it your warlord. You will be doing really well to try to get up towards, like, the 14 to 15 to 1,600 point slots. And I think you will have a good time. Dweghom, I think, overall is an incredibly approachable faction, even for newer players, which makes them a really nice entry point to Conquest compared to some of the other groups that are a little tough to wrap your head around. And I think that is entirely a feature, not a glitch. And if you are watching this because you are a new player looking to maybe get into it, this is a really good green light to do it. If you want a bigger breakdown of Dweghom, rather than just what's in this box, which is rather constrained, we do have a video on the channel breaking down Dweghom, both their lore and the actual gameplay, whole army, and goes through more options. Please go check it out if you're interested. but it'll give you a more comprehensive look than what we got here. And we are going to keep these things going. There are many more boxes we need to do. We're just sort of starting with the ones that we know and love and have played with and working our way out. So keep your eyes open for more of that. And also maybe some updates. Here come rules
October.
update time. Because we might have to revise some of our thoughts. And I would really like to be wrong and have some thoughts that are way cooler now than they were before. For now, though, that has been all of our opinions, bona fide and Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all in the next